For this exercise, we're going to create a pie chart in Tableau. All right, now there's a few things that we need to do before we can get started. And that's one is to define our data source. The data source we're going to be using is the same as we used in week 3. It's the HIN 715 HbA1c database, and we're going to be using the visits and labs view from that database. The next piece we want to know is we need to have the number of records. Um, and the number of records here, in this case, is actually a calculated field. And what that, to identify as calculated field, if you look, there's a little equal sign next to that hash mark. And that hashtag simply refers that it's a number field. And if we want to look at what that is comprised of, you'll see there's a title called number of records, and then there's a number 1. And what this is going to do is going to assign a number 1 to every single row of data in our little database here so that we can quickly sum up different criteria based on the number of rows that match that criteria. Now, in our instructions, I plotted them here, I dropped them here, copied and pasted. In our instructions, you're going to see that this assignment requires categorizing BMI into 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different groups. Now, these different groups are ways that we could use BMI to group like patients together or like conditions together. And the easiest way to do that is to use an if-then statement. So I went over to here and I created, right-click, create calculated field. Just delete that. And I created a field called categorized BMI. And I added in the criteria that are listed here. Now, before I recreate anything, I actually have that field pre-created, so this just makes it easier to pull it up and evaluate it. Now, what this is this is called an if-then statement. So if something is 1, fits into this criteria, then we're going to assign it a name. So if you look at this, so right here, the is null, so this first line says if is null, BMI, then unknown or unavailable. And what that is saying is that if there's no value, if there's a blank cell in a blank value or no value under BMI, then we're going to assign it the designation of unknown or unavailable. If BMI is less than 18.5, then according to our instructions, we're going to assign that as an underweight category, and so on and so forth. Greater or equal to 18.5, BMI less than or equal to 24.9, that's going to be normal, and so on and so forth. So this is a really handy way to group lots of data into categories very, very quickly. And I use this formula all the time, so I highly suggest kind of making a note of how this is and get used to using these because they come in very handy. Okay, so now we have our 2 calculated fields, number of records, categorized BMI. We have our data source, which is that business and labs view, as well as our instructions down here. And we are going to be making a pie chart. So let's get started. So the first thing we want to do, we're going to be making a pie chart based on the number of patients that are falling into each categorized BMI field. So first thing we want to do is let's drag our categorized BMI into the detail field. Okay, so right now you'll see that automatically it's assigned a box graph for this database, and that's something that we don't necessarily want. So we want to use a bar graph or a pie chart. I mean, so we click on the drop down, go straight to pie, and we're going to see that here. Now this is actually showing up really big, so I'm just going to make it a little bit smaller so that we can view it, and then we'll come back to making it big again shortly. Hold on, caption off for just a second so that we can minimize this. There's a hidden little box around our graph. Hold on. And I might be able to get there it is. Okay. So there's a hidden little box around our graph that will be allowed to make it bigger and smaller as we go. So I'm going to go back, pull my caption back up with our instructions. I'm just going to drag this down so that we can see it. Okay, so we have our categorized BMI. So step 1 is done. we've made our first outline of our pie chart, and now we're going to start adding some of the fun details. So the first thing we need to do is let's add in categorize colors. We're going to assign a color to each of our BMI values or BMI categories. So if you look over here, in fact, I'm going to bring it over here so we can see it a little bit better. You can see we have a nice color legend. Dark gray is going to be morbid obesity. Normal is going to be dark blue. Obese will be light blue. Overweight is going to be this orangish red, and underweight will be yellow. Now, if you're not a big fan of these colors, no problem. You can always change those simply by clicking on this little down arrow, edit colors, and then you can go and there's a few color palettes that Tableau provides that you can go in and change, which is actually kind of nice. So we can go with the winter scheme. Summer is always nice. And so if we wanted to change any of these colors, we could um, quite easily pick, say, morbid obesity, and we wanted to make it this nice kind of tropical summer blue color. Now, one thing you do have to keep in mind is that many of your audience and many of the people you're encountering in the future may have or they may be colorblind. So you have to take into account, and Tableau does provide a colorblind palette. Um, so if you really want to reach mass audiences, you have to be sensitive to issues as colorblindness. So I take that back. I'm going to actually change that back to a dark gray. Actually, how about a lighter gray? Apply that, click OK, and now we're good to go. So we have our colors, but if you look, they're all the same size. We don't really know how many of each BMI category there are, and so let's take the first steps in bringing that over. So what we want to do is, first thing we want to do is count the number of records per slice of the pie or per um, BMI category. So we just come down to our number of records field, and we're going to drag it up, and we're going to drop it right on the label. So we have, as you can see, there's only 20 underweight patients, while there's 993 obese patients. And so each one of those categories matches that. Now, part of this is to figure out what percentage of the pie belongs to each, because you can obviously see that, the slice of pie for 993 is definitely different than the slice of pie for 2 or for 20. So to calculate the percentage of each pie slice, we can simply go to your number of records here. I'm going to make this a little bit wider so we can see. Number of records, we're going to do a quick calculation. So you just select that little down arrow, come over to here, and percent of total. So we can see that while this was 900, in fact, I'm just going to bring this up to detail so that we can see how many there are. So we have a total number of records of 993. That's 39.72% of this population are considered obese. In fact, we can even add that to the label. So our labels, in fact, n equals the number of records. Now, in this label, we'll see the percent of total sum right here at the top field. In the bottom field, we're going to do the number of records. And then I added this n equals to it so that we can, so it signifies that that's a n size or a person count or a number count versus a percentage or some other count. So we're going to click apply. And now on our graph here, you can see that 31.28% with an n size of 720 or 782 patients. But still looking at this, we have all the pie slices are still the same size. So we want to make sure that we can get that to fit the proper way. So again, we're going to go down to number of records. And the number of records, Tableau will take the number of records and automatically assign a size. So it's going to proportionally assign a size of the pie based on the number of records there are. So if I drop that on the angle, you can see now that 39.72% takes up 39.72% of the pie, and so forth. Now, as part of the assignment, I'm just going to find my invisible line now. Let's see if I can find it over here. There we go. Okay. So as part of the assignment, it was also asked, or you're also asked to order these different categories. And there's several ways to order it. I think the easiest way We could do that. We could either go into here as the instructions say and going to default properties, um, go to sort, and then you can manually sort that. You can sort it by data source, alphabetical, or manual. Manual is a really easy way to do it because it gives you a little more freedom, especially with these categories that most of the time won't be alphabetical. And it's going to be very hard to figure out how to order them. The manual process is just the easiest and quickest way to do it. So the order we wanted to do is underweight. Oh, that's overweight. Uh, we want to do underweight. The next is normal. So we're going to bring normal up simply by clicking on these little arrows. We're going to do overweight, which is there. Obese is next. And then morbid obesity is the last one. So we're going to close that. So now we have our legend nice and ordered. You can see they're ordered here, slightly different. We have our 39.72%. We also have our 31.28% and so forth. Um, One last thing I do want to do, we can change the title and change it to be a little more meaningful pie chart and Tableau. This is simply uh, for demonstration, but summary of BMI um, categories uh, for uh, 2015 to 2016. Click apply. Now I'm not positive those are the dates, so I'm going to go to the lab date, and I just want to see exactly what my range of dates are. And it's 11/27/2012 to 12/31/2016. So we can do this 11/27/2012 to 12/31/2016. Okay, and there we have it. Okay, click apply, and there's a nice little quick and easy summary of pie chart using categorized BMI values.